Good evening. It is Monday night. We are live across social media. It is the state of Scottish football. It might be Blue Monday, but for Scottish football fans, I don't think they'll be feeling too blue as the Scottish Premiership returns with a full midweek card starting tonight at Parkhead. Joining me tonight to look ahead to the midweek action is Struan.
Hello, I am not looking forward to tonight's game, but it'll be what it'll be. I'm happy to be back on. I've not been on in a couple of months, so it's good to be back and just talk about the cinch.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. It's been a while, and for the first time, certainly with myself, and on a Monday is Greg. Greg, welcome along.
Good evening, thanks for having me on. I'm hoping that we can bring as much entertainment to tonight's show like the Ivory Coast goalkeeper did in the African Cup of Nations game last night. Hopefully we have as much entertainment to the viewers.
No pressure there, setting up in that sort of comparison. Now, obviously, Struan, you did mention that the big game tonight at Parkhead is Celtic v Hibs. It would make sense to start there and preview that game, but I think we would be maybe better placed in waiting for some team news to come out and then take a more detailed look at the starting 11s. But maybe we can just touch on some of the news that has come out of Celtic today. Scott Bain signing a contract extension. Was that news that you were expecting?
I didn't really see it coming, to be honest, but I can understand. I think this could possibly lead to Barkas seeing the exit door at some point soon. I think Joe Hart has come in and basically claimed that number one spot, and you'd imagine if all things go as planned, he's probably going to keep it for at least 3 or 4 years. You know, goalkeepers, they go a lot longer. And I think Scott Bain is one of these goalkeepers who's probably just happy to be a backup at Celtic. You know, I think being a backup goalkeeper is never easy, but at his age, with his quality, I think he's pretty much happy to be that backup at Celtic. And I don't know where that'll leave Connor Hazard, obviously the younger goalkeeper, if he'll possibly see another loan somewhere, but I think it definitely must mean that Barkas is going to be sold. I don't think he could really stick around if, Bain's getting this contract. I mean, Leigh Griffiths did sign a contract extension last season and he's been released recently, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a little while. So it may not mean that Bain is there till 2024, but I can understand why he's been given that contract.
Yeah, it's a good point about Barkas maybe seeing the exit door, and someone that has been shown the exit door, you're right there, Leigh Griffiths. Greg, that news kind of breaking over the weekend. A bit of an uncertain future lies ahead for Leigh Griffiths. We might look into it as we kind of look at the games coming up and maybe where he'll end up, but what's your immediate thoughts on what next for Leigh Griffiths?
Yeah, the news is quite an unusual one in terms of a player that's on loan, to the end of the season. His contract was up at the end of the season. And then his parent club are basically saying, we don't want you back. And then it kind of puts him in a state of limbo. He's probably, I think Leigh Griffiths will admit himself that his loan spell hasn't kind of borne fruit in terms of how much game time and how many goals he would like, in terms of, certainly what he's capable of on his day. But the question for a lot of clubs and a lot of fans as well is that is the best days of Leigh Griffiths behind him? Personally, I think so. In terms of the heights and levels he was at before, when being a Scotland regular and playing for Celtic week in week out. I think Dundee have kind of been credited with an interest, with James McPake perhaps saying in local press. Teams like Livingston, Ross County, I could see them, they're kind of struggling at the bottom half of the table, or even abroad, who knows, but it'll be interesting to see where he ends up come 31st of January.
Yeah, there's certainly some teams that could do with a striker in the Premiership, so it'll be interesting. I'm sure it won't be short of some options, but for most teams, it's 8 games coming up in 25 days, so a busy period for Scottish football. As I said, the game tonight is Celtic Hibs. We will look at that later on in the show, but let's look at tomorrow's card, starting with the big game at Pittodrie as Rangers travel north to Aberdeen. Struan, this is probably the game that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will probably be excited as to have starting the campaign again, get the players back up to speed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good opportunity for him. I know he just was named December Manager of the Month in Scotland, and I think Morelos got named player as well, so there's probably a lot of confidence in them. He's had a really good start to his Rangers managerial career. Taking the 2 weeks off, I don't know how much of an impact that'll take on the squad, but I think coming into a match against Aberdeen is a really good opportunity for them to just basically kick on the momentum. Obviously, the transfer business hasn't been too much this window in terms of anybody big players coming in. Of course, the American centre half has come in, his name escapes me.
Jamie Sands.
Jamie Sands, that's the one. I knew it was Sands. I couldn't remember the first name. So yeah, I don't know whether he's going to feature, but they've not had too much activity. Gerrard doesn't seem to have poached anyone at Aston Villa so far, although who knows what will happen there. So I think it'll definitely be an interesting one coming into this one. Obviously, the John Souttar, I'm sure we'll touch on that later as well, but he's not in yet. So I think it'll be very much a similar team. Nathan Patterson's away, but I almost don't feel like mentioning that because I don't think he would have featured anyway, to be honest.
No.
I don't think this would have been a game in which he'd come on. But yeah, I expect Rangers to try and just stake their claim. But what would be interesting though is if Celtic do win tonight against Hibs, that'll possibly put them under even more pressure, obviously gaining that ground. So I think that'll be a really important factor coming into this one.
Yeah, it's always a tough ask, I suppose, coming up to what was set to be a near sold-out Pittodrie. I'm not sure what the crowd's looking at given the rearrangement into a midweek now. But as you said there, Struan, probably the Rangers looking to carry their momentum. But Greg, one of their key players before the winter shutdown was Joe Aribo. He's currently on international duty with Nigeria. How much of a loss will Joe Aribo's presence be to Rangers? Certainly for the next few weeks, but tomorrow night as well.
Yeah, for me, I think Joe Aribo's been one of the Rangers standout players this season. And again, if you kind of look at some of the Rangers fans on social media, it's almost he's playing himself for this Nigeria team in terms of his impact. I think he's kind of kicked on a level again, which seems strange given how well he started the season under Gerrard. But you know, he's a player that's very, very intelligent, capable of playing, you're saying, in that number 10 role, which I think really, really suits him. He can play wide out left. I think he's a real carrier of the ball as well. So even when, in rare times that Rangers, if they are sort of struggling for possession, you can give the ball to him and he can carry it forward 10, 15 yards. And he's really, really athletic. That I think coming up, games like Pittodrie away, that's the sort of ideal scenario that you would want to have him. I've seen it firsthand the last month when he came to Tynecastle, the sort of damage he was able to do and score that goal. I think it gives others a chance in the team to come in. I don't know in terms of what the lineup will be. I know they've had a couple of injury doubts as well. I've seen on Rangers social media over the last few days, but I think if I was an Aberdeen fan and if I was Stephen Glass, I'd be very much glad that he's not involved.
Yeah, I'm certainly glad he's not involved, although as we picked up on our own podcast, that might mean that Scott Wright gets a start, and that'll certainly be an interesting one for the home crowd and see how he handles that pressure. But Struan, from an Aberdeen point of view, we've got no real injury concerns going into this game, although it was emerged on social media after Christmas that Marley Watkins looked to have a serious ankle injury. Some rumours coming out that potentially he has broken that ankle. Aberdeen haven't been blessed with lots of goals this season, Christian Ramirez aside, but with Ryan Hedges possibly rumoured to be going to Blackburn this month, if Hedges wasn't to play along with Marley Watkins, Aberdeen are looking a bit blunt in attack going into this game.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think Christian Ramirez has been one of the best signings of the season so far, but equally, there's not many other goals coming in around that team. I think there was somebody, Austin, as well, signed from Wolves in the summer. And
Austin Samuels, and he's gone back already.
Is he back already? Yeah. Is he joined Longstaff and going back to...
Yeah, we decided to recall Connor Barron from his loan spell at Celtic Hearts instead to give kind of youth players more of a chance instead of Premiership players. Which is refreshing to see. I think look to develop your own talent.
Yeah, I quite like that. But as you say, I think getting goals will be difficult. I mean, against any team, it can always be difficult, but Rangers specifically are incredibly strong at the moment. I don't think Aribo will weaken their defence at all. I think they'll be coming into this one strong. I think Ryan Jack's coming back as well to full fitness. I'm not sure what his exact situation is, but I think that could definitely make Rangers stronger. And I think Aberdeen just need to find a way of scoring. I mean, it could be one of these games where Scott Brown scores a wonder goal from 30 yards or something like that. I think he scored in the reverse fixture. I think it's for the second one, was it, in the 2-2? Yeah. So he'll maybe be up for it again to get a goal. But I think it's definitely a concern that Aberdeen need to find a way of putting the ball in the back of the net. It's a similar problem to Hibs as well with Martin Boyle. Obviously, when you only have one player who's getting the goals, it just can lead the attack to becoming pretty one-dimensional. And against a team like Rangers, you need to be at your best. You need to be creative to get past them. Yeah, definitely. And I suppose Scott Brown will be making a trip to the hairdressers tonight. He was in training pictured with a full head of hair. So has he got hair at the moment? Is that? Yeah, I'm sure that the battle hairdo will be getting prepared tonight. But Greg,
on Aberdeen's lack of attacking threat, obviously there was rumours of Jamie McGrath potentially signing a pre-contract, and it's come out in the press today that that's no longer going to be the case, with Jamie McGrath keen to explore options elsewhere. Stephen Glass saying that he would rather sign players fully committed to Aberdeen instead of players that are keen to explore options elsewhere. Do you think Aberdeen might regret not pursuing Jamie McGrath further?
I think for Aberdeen, they have done everything they can in terms of the salary they can offer. You know, there are obviously clubs down in Championship, League One in England where they can offer more money. But again, it's back to that old debate in terms of, are these clubs bigger than Aberdeen, than Hearts, than Hibs? I would argue not. When you've got teams like Bournemouth, for example, I know they were in the Premier League a couple of seasons ago, but when they've got crowds like 10,000, 9,000, I think they're kind of almost where it's like the Football Manager. They've got like a millionaire, billionaire even owner, and they're able to offer these sums of money. So for McGrath, it seems like he wants to go down to England to, again, we'll talk about maybe John Suter in a second, but obviously wanting kind of more money. I mean, Graham Shinnie moving, and obviously an ex-Don moving to Wigan, or Wigan a bigger club than Aberdeen. I would argue not, but the money that's on offer in England kind of entices players. But kind of similar to Ange Postecoglou in the whole Riley McGree situation, where he's went to Middlesbrough for, is it similar money to Celtic? Perhaps, probably more. He wants that kind of exposure. Players look at the Championship, and it's almost the sort of the one step below the Premier League, where players like, I'll go there and then I can kind of make a better career for myself. And a lot of times it works for players. More often than not, it doesn't. I agree with Glass. I think you want players that are going to be committed to it. I think Aberdeen and Scottish football in circles, arguably, myself and Shroom would disagree, but you could argue Aberdeen are the third biggest team in the country. So if he doesn't want to sign up, he doesn't want to sign up for that. Doesn't want to sign up for competing in Europe. Obviously, next season as well can be. There's a playoff games, I think, in Europa League as well. I think, which is one game away. So these are really big games, and really big, for me, arguably better platforms than League One in England or the Championship. But it's for monetary reasons, and for building the squad for guys like Connor Barron, for example, coming back from Celtic, guys that want to play that, as opposed to Longstaff, who think he's probably doing a favour for Aberdeen by playing there. Obviously, he wasn't even getting in the team at times. So I think it'd be refreshing to see that getting guys that want to be part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, looking to the game tonight and that game tomorrow night, it's just great that crowds are going to be back in full force for this midweek card, because the atmosphere that will be produced tomorrow will certainly enhance the game as well. Now, obviously, we've been speaking about Jamie McGrath. That'll take us into Dundee United v St Mirren, but we're going to actually go to Dundee United first, because it has just been announced officially that Tony Watt has secured his move from Motherwell to Dundee United for an undisclosed fee. Struan, I think that's a big statement of intent for Dundee United, because they have been lacking a real goal scorer in the first part of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so many of Dundee United's games this season, they've been strong defensively, but they've only been scoring 1 or 2 goals, and the biggest results of the season have come, with just 1 goal margins. And I think it was quite ridiculous. I remember when I first heard this rumour, I think it came a few weeks ago, and I just thought, that would be incredible to pull that off halfway through the season, given how good Tony Watt's been, his connection with Kevin Van Veen at Motherwell. But obviously, Tam Courts has got him in. I think his contract's till 2025 as well, which is pretty long one, obviously 3 years from now. I don't know if it'll expire in the winter or if it'll expire in the following summer, but I think it's a fantastic signing from Dundee United. Tony Watt's still only 28. He's a really good striker, and he's obviously got a lot of experience to him as well. I think it's one of these moves that it's a massive loss for Motherwell, in my opinion, but a massive gain for Dundee United. And I think Tam Courts and his team, at the start of the season, it was talking about where they'd be maybe mid-table towards relegation, but they have just sort of proved a lot of people wrong with this European push. And I think Tony Watt is one of those players who can really be the catalyst in getting them further up the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, will Tony Watt provide that catalyst? It's 5 games and 5 straight defeats for Dundee United. Tam Courts will really be hoping that Tony Watt hits the ground running starting tomorrow night against St Mirren.
Yeah, that'll be wise. He's been really keen to get him in now. I think, talk about new manager bounce, but when you talk about probably one of your arguably top 3 players now for Dundee United going in there, I think he's coming off the back of a half season where he's been really prolific. It's probably the best spell in his career in terms of goal return to game ratio. And I think for me, I think Dundee United have been crying out for that. McNulty, again, apart from his almost sort of good spell at Hibs for a season, didn't live up to the hype the second time around. He's not really can hit the ground running up at Dundee United for me. Nicky Clark, I think, is a good sort of bottom half to top championship striker as well. But I think for Tony Walk, probably fire them up into the top six is where they want to be. And as you said, in terms of even just the financial outlay that will bring in terms of finishing top six to be in 8th or 9th, I think whatever fee they've gave Motherwell at this moment in time, it could prove dividends in terms of that. Also cup runs as well if they're kind as well in terms of the draws as well if they're able to get past opposition. So I think it's money well spent, but I think they need to really sort of furnish him with good supply as well. And in terms of where he's going to play, is he going to play on that left hand side like as for Motherwell? Is he going to be up top as a sort of lone striker? I mean, he's done well there, but for me personally, I think he's better with someone alongside him. But we'll wait and see what Tam Courts does in that regard.
Yeah, and I suppose with the kind of early season clamour around him potentially being involved in Scotland squad as well, we obviously got the big game coming up in March. He might view this as an important move to keep any international hopes alive that he may still retain. But Struan, it's 5 straight defeats for Dundee United. It's a lot worse for the Buddies. It's 11 without a win for them. You almost feel that they need a goal scorer. We've just spoke about Jamie McGrath and the importance maybe to St Mirren for keeping him this window, but I also feel that they need a goal scorer. Curtis Main's not really hit the heights this season. Leigh Irwin's, he's still there as well, not really doing anything for them. So the Buddies have been linked with Scott Allen. What would be your thoughts on letting Scott Allen go to St Mirren?
It was apparently in the summer on deadline day. I remember Hibs were linked with Scott Allen plus cash for Jamie McGrath, and obviously that never came to fruition. But obviously there must be a liking for Scott Allen at St Mirren. I'm not sure if that's the right move though, because I feel he's a very similar player to McGrath, and St Mirren need a goal scorer. I feel they need someone who's actually going to put the ball in the back of the net. I like Jim Goodwin. I think he's a really good manager, but I think you can only get so far without having a goal scored. I think there's a few teams in Scotland, we mentioned Aberdeen there, Dundee United, St Johnstone are the same. A lot of these teams are needing an out-and-out striker, and I think St Mirren are right up there. They're one of these teams who so frequently we say, can they get above 6th? Can they push into the European places? Is this going to be the season they can do it? But without a striker, I mean, no wins in 11, as you say there. It's pretty bleak to hear that, especially given the hopes that they had coming into this season. I don't think Scott Allen's going to get much game time at Hibs anymore. I think with the likes of Dylan Tate coming in, Ewan Henderson signing from Celtic, and even prior to those two, Josh Campbell coming through, it looked like Scott Allen wasn't going to be a regular starter. For him, it would be a really good move to St Mirren, but I think it's only really going to go through if McGrath leaves. And if McGrath leaves, it's a nightmare. I mean, you hear it so often with that team. If McGrath's playing well, St Mirren will probably do well, or if St Mirren aren't doing well, you can imagine McGrath's had a pretty quiet game.
Yeah, and Greg, I suppose it then comes to kind of a point I made about Aberdeen and Ryan Hedges. Does Jim Goodwin put Jamie McGrath into the starting 11 tomorrow night, or do you think Jamie McGrath has a quiet word in the manager's ear and says, look, I'm fancying a move elsewhere, I'm not going to start? Because looking at the table, St Mirren just 6 points behind Dundee United as it stands. Dundee United, you touched on there about maybe looking to consolidate top 6 or move towards. Just with Dundee United 2 points behind Aberdeen, they might be looking at this as a great opportunity to make ground on Aberdeen given their fixture. But say from a St Mirren point of view, they'll be really wanting to at least come away from Dundee United with some points.
Well, 100%. When you look at the sort of forms of the two sides, it's a good chance. Obviously, after the break, they've had extra preparation time for it as well going into it. If I was Jamie McGrath, I think Jamie McGrath will want to play. Again, we talk about players looking to get a move. Again, if he's able to assist or score when his agents negotiate with teams, that's fresh in the memory. That might get him a few extra pound or two when he's negotiating that deal. And I think for him as well that he would want to leave on a high as a player. I think any player doesn't want to leave. It doesn't want to be on the sidelines. I think they always want to play, especially having had the winter break. Players want to come in and again get themselves almost for his next team, if obviously moves in this window. I think because he's seen it before on deadline day that the move didn't materialise, he may have that sort of impression as well. And if he was out the team, St Mirren win, you're not going to put a player in that, if your team's winning, you're not going to disrupt him. But I mean, we're talking about goal scorers. I mean, we might mention him at some point, but Kyle Lafferty, probably the only team he's not been linked with is St Mirren. That could be a sort of striker that St Mirren go for as well. It's probably this. I think when the days kind of count down as well to January 31st, that's when teams just start going for players that they normally wouldn't do so. So I think Jamie McGrath. But what it looks like, I think St Mirren want to cash in now if they can get a small substantial fee to then, as you're saying, get another striker or get Scott Allen in, for example, to kind of be a sort of like-for-like kind of replacement. But be interested to see what happens in the game tomorrow. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose one player that has already completed a move this window is John Souttar. So that takes us on nicely to the next game we're going to look at, which is Hearts as they host St Johnstone. Robbie Nielsen, Greg, saying that John Souttar will be available for Hearts. Do you believe he'll be available for Hearts and play? And if so, what sort of reception is John Souttar in for?
Yeah, so I'm involved in many a Hearts fans group chat, and like I was saying to you off air, the reception goes from listen, it's a short career, I can understand, this is the ultimate betrayal. But I think personally, I don't think John Souttar will start tomorrow. Despite what Robbie Nielsen said, I mean, he's done this before. He's came from the Craig Levine mind school tactics, where he'd say one thing to the press and do another. But I think he'll be in the squad. I don't think he'll be out the squad because obviously Rangers, I believe, are trying to get him in this window, and by having him in the stands as a kind of concession of we don't need him now, you can give us a sort of low ball offer, whereas kind of having him in the squad kind of just says to the player and to Rangers that he's still needed. A lot of sort of journalists have kind of said, especially over the Rangers persuasion, have said he's been Hearts' best defender this season, which, having watched the team, he's probably the third best defender after obviously Halkett and Kingsley have been superb. So there's a kind of ready-made replacement, or two actually there, and Michael Smith possibly slotting into that role there with the new right wing back from Australia, Atkinson, playing there, or even Taylor Moore. So Hearts do have options. Again, would I be surprised if he started? I wouldn't be, but I think obviously Hearts kind of similar to McGrath there in terms of he'll want to play. I think he said so to Nielsen that he'll give 100% in training, and apparently he was flying to tackles today to show how committed he is. Whether he's trying to injure players for Hearts play Rangers, it could be an ulterior motive. But I would expect him to be on the bench, especially now we've got 9 subs. But we'll see how it plays out. But be interesting to see what kind of reception he gets from the fans tomorrow. I don't think it'll be a favourable one, given that apparently as well he never told the club that he had agreed to sign for Rangers, and Hearts had found out via Rangers tweet. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow in 24 hours time.
Yeah, absolutely. But Struan, from a St Johnstone point of view, they're currently 2 points adrift at the bottom of the table. It's almost imperative that they take something from this game. Maybe one small glimpse of positivity is that Hearts have actually failed to beat St Johnstone in their last 4 meetings. Is that something St Johnstone can take with a bit of positivity going into this game?
I think so. I think it might be one of the few things St Johnstone have to take positivity from this season. I think it's, I was talking earlier on about how Dundee United have kind of, at the start of the season, we were talking about can they stay up? And as the season's gone on, we've kind of, raised our expectations of what they can do. I think St Johnstone are the total opposite. Off the cup double, I think a lot of people are now just expecting them. I saw before the winter break, a lot of people just saying to me basically that they're sure St Johnstone are going to go down now. And I think if they can get something from this game, it could be massive. Obviously, a new year, it's a fresh start. If they can start off by even getting a draw against Hearts, I think that would be absolutely massive for confidence. And of course, a point in the league table would be huge. But at the same time, if they do lose to this one, I just can't see them picking the form up. I know it's been a difficult season for them as well, losing the likes of McCann and Kerr. Sorry, season both of them choosing championship teams, as we were speaking about earlier on. Xander Clark was recently linked to a move to Aberdeen. Obviously, Scotland international as well. It's just not going too well for St Johnstone at the minute. But if they could get something against Hearts, I think it would be absolutely incredible. And I don't know if they're possibly looking at this Souttar situation and thinking that back line could be slightly disrupted, albeit not too heavily disrupted, it's possibly something they can take advantage of. I don't know if they see this as a good opportunity now, but I think they really, really need to get something from this game. But to be honest, I don't fancy them. I fancy Hearts to win this one quite comfortably.
Don't say that. It's a kiss of death. No. as a Hibs fan, you'll know too well, Struan, that normally when teams are down in their luck and they're struggling to get a point, you kind of want Hearts or Hibs to be playing them, because it's one of those where it's a free. I hate using the phrase free hit, it's a bit of a cliche, but it is a free hit for St Johnstone. I think as well, even the addition of Nadir Chifty, and obviously we've got a large contingent of Celtic fans that watch this as well that probably laughed at his signing, but I think you actually could be good for St Johnstone. I think you could be the sort of striker they actually need, because you've got Stevie May, who, again, I'm looking at you as a Dons fan. He didn't do too well up there, and I know obviously it was in the back of a sort of serious injury down south. And then you've got Chris Kane, who's always this almost much maligned striker, but he's scored goals in vital games for St Johnstone. They guys love running. They guys aren't a sort of focal point, whereas, again, from what I'm led to believe, and I think by his own admission, he's not fared too well, Nadir Chifty. I don't know if he still has his pace. He looked probably from the photo I seen his last club looks a bit bigger. So he might play that role as a target man. And I think he's that kind of Marmite player that fans will hate him. The fans of the opposite team will hate him. But if he's your striker, that the St Johnstone faithful will be loving him. So, I mean, that's a bit of a kind of, he's almost, although he's been in Scottish football with 3 clubs, going into that game, I don't know what we're going to get with him, because I imagine he'll be pitched straight into the starting lineup as well for that kind of reaction. So, and then as well, they've kind of got a new left back, the Boyd Gallagher as well, that signed from Liverpool as well. So, I mean, there's a couple of unknown quantities for Hearts to kind of contend with those two in the lineup. But what about yourself? How do you see the game going, Glenn?
Yeah, you actually kind of stole where I was going there. I kind of do share the same thoughts of Struan, that I think Hearts will win this quite comfortably, purely because Hearts' home form this season has just been so impressive. But that unknown quantity of Nadir Chifty just puts that little bit of doubt. And I think Struan raises a great point. There might be that uncertainty or different Hearts backline that they've had previously. And a player of Nadir Chifty, he just needs that one moment of quality, and he can maybe pounce on that. But Struan, I think St Johnstone will be desperate for him to find that goal scoring form, because, as Greg touched on there, Stevie May's not really done it. I think he's only 2 goals. And obviously Chris Kane struggled with injuries and COVID for the last couple of months. So they desperately need someone to come in and find the back of the net.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Shifty is probably one of my favourite signings of January so far. I just didn't see it coming at all. I think the first time I actually saw it was St Johnstone's official announcement. I just thought it's great to see him back in. Obviously, when he was at Celtic, he was tipped for the stars what he could do, and it's just not quite gone the same. I remember on the video game FIFA, he was one of these 5-star skillers as well, and he was just sort of beloved by people for that reason. And I would like him to do well. I don't want St Johnstone to go down. I think what they did last season, albeit beating Hibs twice in the Cups, was really good and a special moment. And I think it would be a bit of a shame if they were to be relegated the season after. So I hope Shifty can do it, because, I mean, if they can start scoring goals, so many of these games can go the opposite direction. And as well, as I mentioned, losing the captain and the best player in the captain in care and their best player in Ali McCann was absolutely massive. And I think now they just need to kick on and hopefully can find last season's form. But yeah, coming into this one, and speaking about Hibs and Hearts being free hits, just prior to the winter break, the St Johnstone and Livingston Hibs games are definitely now coming back to my mind.
I suppose, if it was for our growth coming up, I wouldn't be too disappointed to see St Johnstone disappear from the top flight. But Greg, as I mentioned, Hearts' home form has been mightily impressive. There's maybe that slip up against Dundee at home that sticks out. And I think the second 45, just before the winter shutdown against Ross County, you certainly rode your luck at times. You said it's maybe that sort of free hit. Is that something that Hearts have got to kind of be cautious of, that they don't take St Johnstone too lightly?
Yeah, St Johnstone will come here with a game plan. When teams historically come to Tynecastle. It's seen as a tight ground, tight atmosphere. The fans are on top of you. I think when Hearts are playing well, the fans give their full back in. So coming into the game, Hearts will kind of be mindful of St John's, as I said, the unknown sort of quantities in terms of Shifty playing, and again, if Gallagher plays, and then depending who plays in the middle of the pitch as well. I don't even know Leigh Wallaceburn if he's still long-term injured, but when he usually has a good game at Tynecastle when he does play. But Hearts, last season, the Championship, we were seen as the team to, go at, because we're the sort of, overwhelming favourites to come back up. So the players now have kind of had that experience here where teams kind of come to Tynecastle, will look to try and frustrate, will look to, get a set piece, go on the counter-attack. So given that most of the squad from last season is still here, again, the back three does suit Hearts as well, where we can kind of be a bit more comfortable in possession. So interested to see what Hearts do in terms of an attacking lineup. Heard bits and pieces that Boyce may not play tomorrow, still struggling a little bit. So I can't see Armand Nondouye playing either. So it could be Ben Woodburn again up front. But I think Ewan Henderson as well has been recalled from Alloa, so I don't know if he will feature in the lineup tomorrow or feature in the squad tomorrow as well. But it's a game that Hearts can't take lightly, and I think a game that, expectations now for Hearts, where coming into the season, I think they all said publicly top six. Fans wanted top 4/above Hibs. I think now, after the break, being third, Hearts fans, certainly the ones, myself included, kind of this expectancy, 5 points gap at the moment over Motherwell. Hearts should be looking to kind of build upon that. So it's a game where Hearts will have to approach with caution, but should be looking to take all 3 points. Although I'm not as confident as you're both saying in terms of Hearts should win. What they should do and what Hearts can turn up can always be a different matter of fact.
It's always easy for a fan of someone that doesn't support your team to be confident. But St Johnstone certainly will be hoping to take something from the game. They've got a big game coming up the weekend after against Dundee, so they won't want to be caught any further adrift from the Dens Park side. And it is Dundee that we're coming on to next. They travel to Allenvale to play Livingston. Livingston did pick up recently, Struan. 1 defeat and 4 going into the shutdown, and have found a bit of form, as they tend to do at home. They'll probably be looking at this as the ideal fixture to restart and try and continue that form that they had.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the 6-pointer of coming up in this week. It's absolutely massive, and Livingston have made themselves hard to beat again, which I think is one of the biggest praise I think you can give of David Martindale on the side. The start that they've had, I think they've come a long way coming into this, and obviously Dundee now, the whole Leigh Griffiths situation, it could be an opportunity for them to say, if we can build some momentum here. I know Ross County have done it as well against Dundee when it looked like Ross County were going to almost open up a gap away from everybody else. They got a big result there, and I think if Livingston can get this, I know it's quite early on, but it's one of these games that if they can beat Dundee, you think about the form of Ross County, the form of St Johnstone. It's one of those results that they could maybe say, we've gone 4 without a defeat now. We're coming into this one, if we can get anything from Dundee, you can really start moving away from that relegation zone. And fair enough, probably won't get anywhere near mid-table, but if they can just get that space, it could be absolutely massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Greg, similar to their neighbours across the road, Dundee are currently also on a run of 5 games with straight defeats, and they're in desperate need of a spark. Struan mentions a 6-pointer. Dundee will be desperate for Danny Mullen to start finding the goal trail again, and Dundee, like you mentioned earlier, a team linked with Leigh Griffiths, and also Scott Allen's name has also been mentioned. Obviously, James McPake, a former teammate of Scott Allen. Do you think those are sort of players that Dundee maybe would benefit from getting in for the second half of the season?
Yeah, St Johnstone, Dundee kind of need a bit of a freshness to the squad as well. I think, even the middle of the pitch as well. I know, like Sean Byrne signed a new deal during the winter period as well. But you've got like Charlie Adam, Paul McGowan, I think, who are, listen, they've not got legs between them. Young Max Anderson's kind of there when those 3 play together. Scott Allen, I think, would be something different in terms of playing off a striker, off Danny Mullen. I think Danny Mullen is a striker which can run the channels as well. I think Dundee have been at their best this season when they've had Luke McKeown and Paul McMullen, playing up there as well. Would mention Kel Lafferty. He's probably another striker I could see going to Dundee as well. He's the sort of player I think could benefit. Again, I know even Hearts fans I've spoken to as well. I've kind of mentioned Andy Halliday being someone who, again, potentially is not going to get offered a deal, and given his contacts, given his associations with the agent as well, in terms of same as James McPake, I believe, and obviously the he's on a podcast, and the friends the podcast he's on with is friends with a lot of Dundee players, so I could see him going there as well. But I think Leigh Griffiths signing for them on a permanent basis, it would be an interesting move. If I was a Dundee fan, I wouldn't gamble with that. I think I would gamble with someone like a Lafferty or a Scott Allen, given where Leigh Griffiths has been at this season. I think you've kind of got to use your money wisely. I think in terms of bringing someone in, especially you want to be away from that trap door, because obviously Dundee are sitting 11th at the moment. They want to be kind of pushing up as high as possible. So going into the game at Livingston, it is going to be a tough game. I would expect them to kind of go with a three in the middle there at the Tony Macaroni, and obviously Mullen playing up top there on his own potentially. But who knows, if given all the headlines, Griffiths may even feature and get a goal against his former club.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Stream, the point you made there about it being a 6-pointer. We said, St Mirren may be looking to get a result at Tannadice to close the gap on Dundee United. Livingston will also be having that one eye on the top six as well as. So it'll be an interesting game to see kind of who can assert their dominance as such, because Dundee will want to create even more daylight to themselves on the bottom, but also Livingston with those top six aspirations.
Definitely. I think it's the perfect opportunity to just, almost assert themselves and say, we're here to stay. And I think just, for example, like Ross County have done that recently. Obviously, I don't like to mention it, but the result they got against Hibs prior to the winter break, that was absolutely massive. And I think a lot of people have been saying that it's been coming for Ross County, although they haven't been, getting the wins. There's been so many times they've scored goals, and 2-1 up against Hearts and that in into all. So many 3-2s for them as well this season. They just seem to scoring goals has been no issue, but then obviously at the back it's a bit of a difference. But they have started to get some big results, and people are now saying, if they can keep this form, it can keep them up. Obviously. And I think for Dundee and Livingston, if either of them can get a big win here, as we say, it's a 6-pointer, it can definitely just make a point, make a statement to just say, yeah, we are here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's Ross County where we go to. It's the last of the games on Wednesday. They host Motherwell, a game that maybe some people will expect lots of goals to be in. And as Struan mentioned there, Greg, Ross County have picked up their form. You'll have seen yourself, I'm sure, the second half performance they put in at Tynecastle, obviously unlucky against Celtic to concede so late on. Malky Mackay will be looking at the way they kind of played November, December, and just say, look, lads, let's keep that sort of standards up, and hopefully the results become a bit more consistent.
Yeah, Ross County obviously had a difficult start to the season, obviously with the COVID call-offs and stuff as well, which made it difficult. Malky Mackay's basically kind of brought in, I think 10, 11 players as well, and it takes time for a team to gel. I know that kind of Ross County had their Christmas break in January. They went down to London and stuff, and by all accounts had a really good team on the back of it as well. Had played well on it, so I think the team are starting to gel. They're starting to obviously buy into the manager's beliefs as well. For me, the loss of Harry Clark is going to be massive to that defence as well. I think it was that I've seen speculation that Rangers had even been scouting him and been cited their interest in him, such as the impact he'd made. But obviously Arsenal were keen to kind of hold on to an asset. Is he going to play for Arsenal? Well, given their form, you could never rule out in the future. But I think for that'll be a miss. And even having seen Conor Randall close quarters when he played for Hearts, he's definitely not an upgrade for that right back position, and Randall was even playing left back at times just to be in the team. So I think that'll be a loss, but I think things are starting to gel there in terms of his belief. Hungbo and Charles Cook, again, we talk about that in terms of wide men for Dundee was mentioning. Those two there are really mainstays of that Ross County side, and I think if they can get those guys involved as well, that sort of game sets them up quite nicely in terms of playing Motherwell. So I think tomorrow they could certainly be in with a win if they can kind of carry off their pre-split form.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to see how Regan, Charles Cook and Hungbo that you've mentioned there, if they can continue that fine form. But Struan, I think, Greg's absolutely right. Harry Clark will be a huge miss for Ross County, a boost for Hibs once he comes back from that hamstring injury. But how much of a miss will Tony Watt be for Motherwell going into this fixture? Because Motherwell's away form has been pretty poor. They've had that win at Aberdeen, but that's the only win in 6 that they've had on the road. They're probably looking to consolidate their place in the top 4 European ambitions, but Graham Alexander's got to be concerned about their form away from Fir Park.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's the biggest loss. We spoke earlier on about how big of a bonus and an added pressure it was to Dundee United to get somebody like Tony Watt, and I think obviously that then means it's a massive loss for Motherwell, and it's never easy for a team to lose one of their best players, arguably the best player, and I think that's what a lot of people hate about the January transfer window is seldom do you actually see the biggest deals happening because a club don't want to lose their best player. Motherwell have had to do that. I personally really like Kevin Van Veen. I think he's been absolutely excellent this season, and one of those players who you say, where has he been? Why did we? I think it was Scunthorpe he'd come from, and where has he been all this time? He's absolutely fantastic, but it will be a massive loss. And I think if Graham Alexander and his side can get a result against Ross County, it will be massive away from home. But I think this is one of those games where they're definitely going to be coming into it a little bit unsure, losing one of the top goal scorers. It's never going to be easy. So I think if they can make a statement victory, it could almost take away that and say, maybe we didn't need Tony Watt, maybe we were good enough without him. But again, if it's one of these defeats and it's one of the games perhaps where they have a lot of chances and they're not really taking them, it's just going to pile on the pressure of why did we sell him in the first place, and do we try and move for Leigh Griffiths or something like that, or Kyle Lafferty.
Yeah, and I suppose it also puts a bit of pressure on Kevin Van Veen, and not just in terms of goal scoring, but staying fit, because if he was to pick up an injury, Motherwell suddenly without 2 of their goal scorers this season. So certainly an interesting few weeks maybe in the transfer market as well for Motherwell to react. But we will come back to tonight's game as the team news is now in. I know there's plenty of you in the comments on tonight's video eager to discuss the events that will be taking place at Parkhead. Struan, maybe not so much, but Greg, I'll come to you and we'll look through the Celtic team. Maeda, one of the January signings, makes his debut starting for Celtic tonight. Joe Hart in goal, Juranovic, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, and Greg Taylor coming in at left back. Callum McGregor, Hatate, I think he's the other Japanese player, making his debut as well in midfield, with Leo Abada, Tom Rogic, and James Forrest completing the lineup. No Kyogo at all in the squad tonight, but Jota and Giacomanis both on the bench. Surprised to see no Kyogo, and I guess it's for Celtic fans, they'll be excited to see their new signings start as well.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that possibly you could have said is a black mark against Ange Postecoglou's name, that when Kyogo was kind of wrist, you could say, in that Europa League game, he got injured, and I think he's kind of in that kind of more longer term view of it now that he's got Maeda in as well. And I think from the clips I've seen and even what Celtic media have posted, he's almost a like replacement. His pace could rival Kyogo's as well. The fact that obviously Ange Postecoglou has managed Maeda before as well, he'll know exactly what's expected of him. So leading the line tonight, it's good that it'll be interesting as well for us neutrals kind of watching to see what sort of player he is. Riho Tati coming in as well, which again is an interesting one. Again, there was, I'd maybe said on one of the shows a couple of weeks ago that I could see him playing at the left back, given that he's played there before, and given that he kind of does most of his best work centrally, given the invented fullbacks. I thought that could have been a move for him there, but obviously Greg Taylor starting there. So back to Kyogo, I think. Listen, obviously, if he's not fully fit, I wouldn't take the chance, given the magnitude of the season in terms of this. What's at stake in terms of Champions League group stages? Miss out this game, give the new guy a chance, who's again going to be all out to impress the Celtic fans and his managers. Show what you can do. So, hopefully it'll be a good game. As a neutral, hard as a Hearts fan asking who I would want to win, but hopefully a good game to watch nonetheless.
Yeah, and I suppose the thing is as well, with the 8 games coming up in the 25-day period, probably more for the likes of Celtic, maybe one eye on the they will want to have silverware come the end of the season. They'll maybe, as you say there, Greg, focus on the longer term picture and not want to risk Kyogo any further. But Struan, as a Hibs fan, how do you view that Celtic lineup? First of all, are you happy to see Jota on the bench and no Kyogo, or is there a bit of fear and trepidation with the unknown quantities in that side?
I'm happy to see no Kyogo or Jota, but at the same time, I am a little bit worried about the rest of the team. I think that defence looks strong. You could argue it's Celtic's strongest back four, possibly with Christian Julian coming in there, possibly for Starfelt. It's definitely one that Hibs probably will be worried about. Obviously, I think Celtic were missing Joe Hart as well prior to the lockdown. I think he had COVID after the cup final, so obviously they'll be happy to have him back in now. And as Greg said there, Daizan, I think I pronounced that correctly, played Daizan Maeda, is that how it's pronounced? Sorry. Yeah, so he played under Postecoglou before, so even though it's his debut, I think he's going to know what to do, and I think Postecoglou will know what's to come from him, so I don't think there'll be too big of an adjustment period there. And I think now what the Celtic team has started to get more is depth. I think that was possibly one of the biggest issues coming into this season, especially when you look at Rangers' team, for example, going for the title, the two of them. Rangers' depth is far superior to Celtic's, regardless of starting 11 quality. Celtic, whenever they're missing a couple of players, it was dire, really. And we saw that when Kyogo was missing previously, with Jota was out, the academy players were coming in, and I think that's been a massive issue. But now they are starting to get that depth, and it's even with a few absentees like Jota and Kyogo in a massive game like this, they still have a really strong team coming into it.
Yeah, I noticed Tony Ralston also on the bench as well. So, like you said, Celtic do have a lot of strength and depth on the bench. Really frustrating from a fantasy point of view when you've got Ralston and Kyogo as captain. It's not going to be a good night on that basis. But Struan, Hibs lining up with Macy in goals, the new signing Rocky, Paul Hanlon, Josh Doig, Cadden, Doyle Hayes, Josh Campbell, Newell, Wright, Boyle, and Nisbet is the starting 11. Happy with that starting 11?
I'm still trying to figure out whether it's a flat back four with Doig, Cadden, fullback, and then Bushiri and Hanlon in the middle, or if Josh Doig's going to be in the back three and Dre Wright's possibly in the left wing back. The way that the lineup's been tweeted out kind of makes me feel it is going to be a back three, which I think Maloney's preferring that 3-4-1-2 with, I presume, Campbell in behind Nisbet and Boyle. It's interesting coming into this. Obviously, Hibs have signed 6 players in this transfer window. Only one of them has come into the starting 11, and it's the most recent arrival, obviously, but arguably the most important one. So it's a massive game for a lot of these players. You can tell there's 5 or 6 key players missing out there. The midfield is still quite strong, though. I think with Doyle Hayes and Newell will hopefully try and get on the ball as much as they can. And I think it could be one of these big games where somebody like Kevin Nisbet really needs to find his form, because you don't know how many chances Hibs are actually going to get tonight. It's with just looking at the two lineups, I think coming into this game you'd fancy Celtic, but I think seeing the two lineups now, I think you'd lean even heavier to that decision to say, Celtic are a much stronger team coming into this one.
And I suppose, though, Maloney will take confidence coming into this game currently unbeaten as manager. But I suppose, Struan, just finally from you, that it probably is that you've just mentioned there, Hibs do have to be clinical when presented with chances. We've seen Martin Boyle in the Cup in that semi-final against Rangers, how clinical he was. Not only do you need Kevin Nisbet firing, but you need Martin Boyle firing as well.
Definitely, and I think that kind of stems as well from how poor Hibs have been defensively. 1 goal leads just simply aren't enough, because a clean sheet is not happening for Hibs anytime soon, especially against a team like Celtic. So you'd assume coming into this one that Hibs are going to need to score at least 1 or 2 if they want to come away with a victory. And obviously we've seen Kevin Nisbet's not been on the best of form. Jamie Gullen's away now permanently. Christian Doig just had his injuries, and Elias Melkerson I think as well. I think his work permit hasn't been granted, so that's why he's missing out. Maybe Chris Mueller could come off the bench and make an impact, but I think, as you say there, Hibs need to be clinical, because I don't fancy them to have the majority of the ball, and any chance that they do get tonight, they're really going to have to take against a strong team. And as I said, I think that's arguably Celtic's strongest back four and goalkeeper.
Yeah, and Greg, I suppose when you look at that Hibs side, you've got Scott Allen on the bench, obviously linked with moves away. Christian Doig, as Struan just mentioned, they're not in the best of form, obviously struggled with injuries again. Also, another player linked with a move away. I don't know if you would look at that bench compared to Celtic and think Celtic possibly have the better strength and depth to influence the game if it's not going in their favour.
Yeah, definitely. Celtic have match winners kind of on the bench as well. I know who mentions Giamakis is kind of he's almost like I don't want to say he's a plan B, but for Celtic, when they are playing games where sometimes you have to sort of get a goal, have to kind of go a bit more direct. He's that sort of player, but having been top goal scorer in the Eredivisie last season, again surprised Celtic were kind of managed to acquire him, given that usually like Ajax and Feyenoord and PSV usually take first pick of these players. So obviously Celtic have done well to get him. So I look at that, and then like Muller, who again is coming with sort of good fanfare, in terms of Ricardo Kaká, as he says, advised them to join Scottish football because of the atmosphere at Celtic Park being one of the examples. And surprised he kind of made it out the Hibs training ground after he was seen tweeting a picture with an owl on the Royal Mill in Edinburgh. I know Martin Boyle had said, "You're not going to survive this." So he seems an interesting character nonetheless. So, I mean, I think John Maloney's right in terms of it looks like he's playing a midfield three there. Given the fact, obviously, the fullbacks like to come in. It's a big pitch at Celtic Park as well. So I'm surprised. I don't know if Stream will kind of correct me here in terms of Dre Wright's kind of been out of the picture almost under Sean Maloney. I'm kind of surprised to see him kind of coming in. I know he was kind of mentioned as well as a potential person who went to St Mirren for the McGrath deal in August. So I don't know how's Dre Wright been playing under Maloney's games that he's came in.
It's quite an interesting one because I remember he got the start recently and people were kind of taken aback by there and saying, he needs to take advantage of this. And he didn't have a fantastic game, but at the same time, a lot of people were saying, he's done quite well there. And I don't think he's really had a position in this Hibs side recently, even under Jack Ross. I feel like he's always been one of these players who he has suffered from injury, but I feel he's always one of these ones who is never going to be a starter. He's always going to be one of these players who has to work their way into the team. And I think it's really interesting though that coming into this one, obviously Cadden's out, Porteous is out, Harry Clark's out. I assumed that I said to us before we went live that I think Lewis Stevenson might be in the back three with Doig at wing back. But I think the fact that Doig's playing centre half potentially and Dre Wright on the left side is pretty good praise, to be honest. I think Sean Maloney obviously has faith in him there. I still wouldn't be surprised though if Dre Wright was to just leave in this transfer window. I think it's one of those signings who he can do a shift when required, but from his point of view, he possibly will want to go elsewhere because you'd imagine that once a lot of these players come into the side, he's one of the first to drop out, stay on the bench, and you don't exactly know where he's going to come in. But if he has a good performance tonight, it could be a massive opportunity because he really needs to take it. And I'm excited by these sort of moves. I remember when Josh Campbell got the big start prior in the Premier Sports Cup and thinking, he's a youngster, what's going to happen here? And he played really well. And I hope that hopefully Dre Wright can possibly provide a goal. Talking about being clinical, maybe he's the one to score some kind of 30-yard 90th minute screamer to win 1-0 or something like that. But I'm maybe just talking about a dream there.
I suppose we're speaking about Celtic players having important debuts to try and make an impact. From a Hibs point of view, that you've got that defender there making his debut. That's a big stage, to make your debut. Important for him to hit the ground running as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's quite interesting that, he's only been here a week and he's starting arguably one of the biggest games of the season. Coming into this one, I think if everybody was available, it would have been McGinn, Porteous and Hanlon in that back three. I don't think Maloney would have put him straight in. Obviously, he's just getting used to the team. There's a fantastic picture of him in training, absolutely wiping somebody out. So he's obviously getting into it. He's not played at all this season for Norwich's first team, so I don't know how rusty he's going to be. I don't know what his game time has been like coming into it, but yeah. I mean, Hibs' defence has been that poor. I don't think it can be any worse than Nathan Wood, if I'm being honest, because that was a disaster of a transfer, to be honest. And I think obviously Darren McGregor as well is about 40, so it's a really good opportunity for Bashir to put himself into the first team because I think he can easily be a regular in that back three. He's highly rated, obviously has the links with he looked up to Maloney, he knew him from the Belgian national setup, and obviously Ben Gensel, the Norwich connection. So hopefully there's been a lot of scouting done. Hopefully he is the right man. Hibs have been linked with so many centre backs like McCart and Kerr as well in the past, so hopefully it works out. I think the worst solution, or the worst possible outcome rather, would be some kind of annihilation from Celtic, some sort of 3 or 4-0, and instantly on social media, why is this Rocky Bashir been signed? He's not even better than McGregor or anything coming into that. So that's obviously going to be a worry. But equally, he could keep a clean sheet, and he's a hero in instance. It's going to be a really interesting debut. And as I said, of all the 6 arrivals, I'd have put him last. Obviously, Henderson is cup tied for not cup tied, but he can't play against his team. I would have put Rocky as possibly one of the least likely to play, but it's just come out that he's the only one who is playing now. So yeah, massive opportunity for him. And obviously I am biased, but I really hope he takes it.
Yeah.
With a name like Rocky, sorry, I was going to say, with a name like Rocky Open, he's going to be quite a fighter and quite a hard centre half as well, given the kind of connotations with the boxer Mr. Balboa.
You can see the memes, can't you, of Rocky Balboa? There's just so many going to come out, aren't there?
Hibs didn't miss a trick with their marketing or the announcement of the signing, tying that into a boxing gym. But
I thought Marciano at first for a second when I saw the Rocky gif. I thought, hang on, it's not coming back, is it?
But Greg, I was going to say, we've been speaking a lot on this episode tonight about, you know, players being linked with different clubs. I think it'd be amiss if we didn't speak about Martin Boyle, a player who seems to have turned down a move to Saudi Arabia on life-changing amounts of money. Now, we spoke about Celtic's strength and depth maybe not being on the same level as Rangers. People maybe in the comments won't agree with that, but as neutrals that don't support Celtic, maybe we're allowed to say that more freely. But would Martin Boyle be a player that Celtic should potentially look at? Sorry, Struan, to announce that to you.
If the move came about in the summer, I would say 100% yes. But given the sort of strength and depth Celtic now have, because then when you look at Kyogo coming back, obviously we've got Maeda playing tonight. So again, there's arguments that Maeda can play on the left. You've obviously got Jota to come back in. You've got Abada. So straight away you're thinking, right, not all of them are going to play in Postecoglou's lineup, so you're going to have at least two on the bench. So to then spend something, again, rumoured to be anything from 3 million to 4 million plus, for a guy, I know, you know, he's 29 years old, 29 years of age. Is it value for money for Celtic? Well, you could say that they're weakening opposition in the league, obviously with Hibs, but it probably gives them a service when Hibs play Ranger or Hibs play Hearts, for example. Not that they're competition in that regard, but you know they're able to do damage to these sides. So I don't think it's worthwhile for Celtic, given the figures that Hibs want. And to be honest, quite rightly, you know, Hibs value him at however much they want to sell him for, you know, in terms of what he brings to the team. And we talked about their Europa League football. You know, I think it's a playoff now for next season as well. So you can imagine if having him involved for that. Again, Australia, you know, I think they're still in contention for Qatar 2022. So again, if he played on that stage, because he's part of the mainstay of the Australian national team, you could sell him on the back of that as well. So I think Hibs are entitled to ask for what they seem as value for money. But given Celtic are now going other markets such as Japan and they're able to get maybe more value there, I don't think Celtic should go for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that, and probably Struan, you'd rather he went elsewhere than the Scottish Premiership.
I'd rather he went nowhere else, but yeah, I think that would be annoying to see him go to somewhere else in Scotland. Yeah, definitely, and it'll be an interesting game tonight. Obviously, debuts are across from both sides. But Greg, what are you expecting? Are you expecting Celtic to kind of come out? You know, I mentioned about the Aberdeen Rangers game. Probably going to be a fiery affair, lots of atmosphere. You know, be a full house at Parkhead tonight. Is this kind of, and similar to what I said to Struan about Rangers, is this an ideal game for Celtic to restart their league campaign? Hibs will provide a tough test, so ideal opposition for Ange.
Definitely, I think it's the sort of game that you want to come, because Hibs will, you know, Maloney's been a player at Celtic. He knows what it's all about, and knows kind of what's, you know, in terms of the atmospheres the fans can give the home side. So the team will be cautious. The team will be kind of set up to win as we look at that lineup. And I think for Ange Postecoglou, you know, this is the sort of game. It's, you know, one of the better games, to, you know, no disrespect to like a lesser team in the bottom half of the Scottish League, but you know, it's a game where, you know, the players want to be involved in, and given that it's the first game back, the fans will be up for it as well. So I'm hoping, as a neutral watching it, it's got the makings of a classic.
Yeah, and it'll definitely be one to watch. And Struan, I hope it's not too much of a painful watch for you tonight. But Struan and Greg, it's been a pleasure chatting all things Cinch Premiership with you tonight. Great to have football to look forward to, and State of Scottish Football will be back again tomorrow night between 6 and 7 o'clock. Looking back at the game tonight, and probably taking a bit more in-depth look at the games tomorrow. Obviously, we've just kind of done a brief preview, given the kind of looking ahead to what teams have done over the January window. But Stu and Greg, thank you very much for joining me.
Cheers, I really enjoyed it.